This news also part of breaking news. At the moment there, you can see it at the bottom of your screen. Families of Life Esidimeni patients have now reached an agreement with the Gauteng government on the settlements of claims. Those who are yet to be compensated marched on the Premier's office. They'd actually accused David Makhura of being heartless. This was now earlier in the year. To remind you what this was about, as if you need the reminding, at least 144 mentally ill patients died in this tragedy. I understand I have on the line, I'm joined by government spokesperson Thabo Masebe. Mr. Masebe, good day to you, sir. Give me the details of how this agreement was reached. What can you tell me about this?
Yeah, good day. We have had a series of meetings with the families starting from last week, and the meetings continued this week. On Wednesday, we met with a small committee of representatives of the families, and we're also joined by the officials from the Master of the High Court, Office of the Master of the High Court, as well as the Department of Health and all the relevant government officials within the Gauteng provincial government, to look at the whole process, what else needs to be done before payments can be made. And all of us agreed that we need to move with speed to finalize all the, or to settle all the claims, but that there's a legal process required which can only be overseen by the Master of the High Court in terms of the Mental Health Act. And so we've all agreed that once we have verified all the claims from the point of view of government, we will now approach the Master of the High Court to issue letters of authorization to the claimants, who will act either as administrators or executors. And once that is done, we will start making the payment into the bank accounts provided by the claimant.
When do you suspect that is going to be? I understand there is now a process involved. What is the timeline for money, the money these families are entitled to, Mr. Masebe? When is that going to end up in the banks?
What we've also agreed is that we are not going to wait for everybody to conclude the verification process. As soon as claimants conclude the verification process with the Master of the High Court, we will start making payments. In fact, as I'm speaking to you, I think a few claims are already in the payment system, and they will start receiving their money within the next week. And the bulk, the rest of them, will be paid in January, the period during which we expect that the Master of the High Court will have concluded most of the verification process.
I would imagine then, knowing that many of these families have had to deal with hefty medical bills previously before the loss of their loved ones, I imagine then, Mr. Masebe, that they're not going to be responsible for any legal or any administrative costs that have been involved in the verification of these claims.
As part of the agreement, they will not be expected to pay any administrative fees in relation to the claims. They will receive the money in full in line with the order given by Justice Museneke. So if there are any administrative or legal costs, they will be for the account of the Gauteng provincial government.
Why do you think it has taken so long? This was one of the arguments from the family spokespeople earlier in the year, Mr. Masebe, when they had marched on the Premier's office. One of the claims was that the Premier was heartless. I'm not asking you about that. They were saying it was taking too long. Take me back. What was taking so long, and why has it now suddenly come through so quickly in the past couple of months since that march took place?
I think as government, we have already said that it is regrettable that the process took so long. And in fact, in the meeting with the families, the acting Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, did apologize that we shouldn't have taken this long, but that we are totally committed to expedite this process to ensure that there is no further delay. Obviously, at the time when we started processing the payments, there were many interpretations with regard to what process needs to be followed. But once all of us were clear about what process needs to be followed, we were able to move with speed.
Perhaps a final question to you, Mr. Masebe. The money aside, and obviously that's incredibly important for the families to now get that closure. So many questions were being put to your government about how you're going to prevent this in future. And I'm sure the families would have asked Panyaza Lesufi that as well. How are they going to stop this happening in future as part of the closure process? I'm sure that you are going through with the families. What was the response?
Yeah, obviously now we're only dealing with the financial aspect of the order that was given by Justice Musaneke. But it was the order included a number of other things that need to be done, including a recovery plan that needs to be agreed to between government and the families. We continue to work with the families to ensure that the quality of health care that we provide to the mental health care users is of the highest standard. And we also are committed as government to have regular meetings with the representatives of the mental health care users so that if there are any issues that arise, we're able to attend to them before any lives are put at risk.
Mr. Masebe, I'm going to say thank you very much indeed for taking time to speak to us. Thabo Masebe, speaking on behalf of the Gauteng government, part of that breaking news of the Esidimeni tragedy is the only way to term that. When 144 mentally ill patients died in that tragedy, we now understand, and we've just heard from the government spokesperson, that the families and government have agreed to terms. Mr. Masebe telling us that some families have even been paid already, and the rest are being expedited to get that money into their accounts as